All right, attention jurors and department.
Okay, everyone can be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to continue this morning by turning to the defense and allowing them to make inquiry. Mr. Trainer.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Good morning.
For those of you that I have not met yet, my name is Charles Traina. I, along with Jennifer Spradley, who's seated right here, and Jay Duncan, who's seated at the end of the table, are the defense team, the attorneys that have the pleasure and the honor of representing Ms. Julie Schenecker, who's seated at council table as well. I know that we've talked to a lot of you over the last 4 days, and I guess the first thing I want to say is welcome. It's Friday. I don't know how y'all look at it. I don't know if you are a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of group, but there's good news and bad news attached to that. The good news is we might get finished sometime today. The bad news is it's not now. So I want you to try to listen and bear with us. This is a process. Trials have a very strange pace all of their own. In fact, it couldn't actually be said that any one trial is the same as any other trial. So they all differ. And even though it seems like things have been moving rather slowly, and I'm sure you've been sitting out there waiting and getting transportation and coming back and going home and coming back, there is a method to the madness. And to wit, we started out with close to 200 people, and we now have this group that's left with us. So we are making some progress. But every trial has a pace of its own. And you've been exposed at this point to what I would consider to be probably the slowest of the paces that a trial has. Later on, things pick up a little bit. I want to welcome you not only with those words of optimism and pessimism that we're not done exactly yet, but I want to also tell you that what you've done already is greatly appreciated, because what you've done already is participate in this jury selection process, and even if it turns out that you are not selected to be on this jury, you have really been helpful to us. You've really been helpful to the process and to the system whereby we do these trials. If you stop to think about it, and just look at it from a numbers standpoint, I know we got some numbers people in this group. You guys could appreciate this, perhaps. The number one reason why people don't get selected to be on a jury is simply because we don't get to them. Because maybe we get the jury before we get to the rest of the group. So I certainly would hope you don't take anything personally if it turns out that you were not selected to be on this jury. At the same time, part of our responsibility, and certainly part of my responsibility, is hopefully to ask of you questions that tend to cause you to come out to us. In other words, get to know you a little bit, because we are hoping to find the people that would be best suited to be seated on this jury. There are different kinds of trials. There are civil trials, there are criminal trials, there's of all types. And one particular trial may not be your cup of tea. And that's maybe what we're trying to find out about, because maybe you might be better suited to be a juror in another kind of trial. Maybe not. But that's the reason for all these questions. And as I said earlier, if it appears that there's some type of meandering and feeling out and kind of probing, well, that's the reason for it. We're all doing the best we can under these circumstances to try to come up with a good fit for this jury so that the state of Florida and our client, Julie Schenecker, can get a fair trial. So that's the purpose of this. And I think that it can't be said enough that what you do here just by your presence is appreciated. Now, having said that, I will tell you this. It becomes very important for us to do things that we're not comfortable doing. And I mean us, meaning everybody in this room. If you stop to think about it, and this could happen in a big city, Tampa's not that enough, and you could theoretically have 60 or 70 people walking down the sidewalk at lunchtime in a big-sized city. And if you stop to think about that just for a second, what is the likelihood that you or me or Mr. Pruner or the judge or anyone would just and say, my goodness, this large group of people that's walking towards me, let me go up and ask them, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? How many kids do you have? What do you think about mental illness? What do you think about law enforcement officers? What do you think about trials in general? What do you think about the subject, the kind of subject we're talking about? If you stop to think about that on a realistic basis, it's not likely that somebody's engaged you in that kind of conversation, maybe ever. Most of the time when we do, as people talk about these kinds of issues that are important like this, and certainly this is very, very important, those are conversations that are had in more private settings, conversations with your best friends, or conversations with your wives or your husbands, or with your brothers or sisters or moms or dads, kind of conversations you have with people that you're close to, where you feel confident that you can express yourself, and you can express yourself without fear of feeling, well, maybe I'm just not on this particular point, or maybe I am and maybe they're not, that kind of situation. Well, we don't have that luxury here. And besides that, and as the format dictates, some of you I haven't spoken to at all. Now, some of you raised your hand about other issues, and we have spoken briefly, but I haven't spoken to you, many of you, at all. And yet, part of this morning is that I'm going to try to see what I can do to get to know you in a very small amount of time, and some very, very serious issues, and so I ask you to bear with me, because this process is more difficult than you might think. And if you put yourself in that situation where you say, I've got to get to know 60 or 70 or 80 people, and I've got just today to do it, and I want to talk to them about very, very personal issues, and I want to talk to them about very, very important, significant issues, and I want to be able to talk to them in such a way that they don't feel uncomfortable, and that I don't feel uncomfortable asking them. Think about that for a second. And that's what we're trying to do here today. And that's what we've been trying to do here all week. So, that's the thing. Now, I ask you, I look at you and I say, well, are you happy to be here? Well, I don't know if you're happy to be here. You're here because you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to be good citizens, and you got a summons in the mail, and you came here, and you're trying to do right. And that's appreciated. Are you ecstatic to be here? How many of you are just dying to be here? How many of you are just fired up? Just ready to go. I want to be here. I want to be here more than I want to be anywhere else in the entire world. I don't care about my job right now. I don't care about my family that's at home right now. I don't care about my vacation time that I've got coming up. I'm not thinking about any of that. I want to be here. Well, maybe that's not the case. Okay, well, I may have been born in the morning, but maybe not this morning. So I ask you just to be patient and consider all of these things when we try to talk today. I ask you to consider those things because it's very, very important. The reason that we're here, the reason that we are together, and the event that draws us together is very, very significant, very, very important. And you had to go no further than the first few minutes when Judge Battles spoke to you and told you the charges that Ms. Schenecker faces to understand that. But if it needed to be said again, I just said it. It's very, very important, the reason we're here. And so I ask you to understand the context of why we're here and what we're trying to do. And I also ask you to remember this. There's not one single question that I or anyone else, I suspect, would ask you that's intended to make you feel bad or to make you feel uncomfortable or embarrassed or make you feel that you can't communicate with us. These questions that are going to be asked of you, many of them are personal in nature. Many of them are designed to try to get to know you, and in some fashion or other, maybe you feel a little uncomfortable about that. Well, you have some options. First of all, I really do hope that you don't feel uncomfortable, because that's not the intent. That certainly is not the intent of anyone here. That's not the intent. But to the extent that maybe you do feel a little bit uncomfortable in sharing some pieces of your inner thoughts, you have an option. That is to approach the bench and we can talk about it privately. And you don't even have to come up here and talk into the microphone and yell into the microphone so that it's not really private anyway. People can hear what you're saying. You come up and talk quietly, and it would just be the judge and the attorneys there, and we can do it that way. But please do not feel uncomfortable with this process. The process is designed to try to come up with a group of people that can decide this case that's coming up in a fair and impartial manner, and nothing more and nothing less. So again, I appreciate your time. And again, I remind you that what you've already done is greatly appreciated. Now, having said all of that by way of introduction, it's my turn. So I get to talk to you all finally. And I've been listening and taking some notes down, and I've listened to some of the answers that you've given when you were asked other questions by other people, particularly when Mr. Pruder was speaking to you yesterday, and I took down some notes and things like that. I want to try to avoid repeating questions exactly as they were put to you, if I can, but I hope you'll forgive me if I still wish to ask questions about issues that you've already discussed in some fashion or other. I would like to maybe explore a different aspect of that particular issue. And I guess what I would start about, I know, thanks to the jury slips that you all filled out, that you all remember or don't remember, we have some small amounts of information about you. And then yesterday, you guys all gave some sort of biographical information about yourselves and things in terms of things like, well, this is how long I've been married, or I've been divorced for this long, I have children, this is how many I have, I work at this particular profession, these are my hobbies, this is how much education I've had. Those things we've kind of taken notes about and we kind of understand. I might ask you to elaborate a little bit, but for the most part I might try to stay away from those things. I want to ask one thing though that has to do with your personal information. I want to know if anybody in here, and this is something maybe some of you have already addressed, I don't know. I want to find out though, is there anybody here that in the course of your education, or in the course of your employment, or in the course of just in general being a family kind of a person, have you ever had any kind of medical, even if it wasn't a thing or experience? Has anybody here ever done that? By a show of hands. And hold on for a second with your hands. What I'm implying here is that maybe you took some kind of classes in the school, or maybe you took some classes in terms of maybe CLE kind of things, or continuing education kind of things, or maybe you just had to become aware to maybe help someone. Maybe you had someone that you've been trying to help out, a family member or a friend, and so you got to be a little bit knowledgeable about this kind of situation from that. So it doesn't imply that you have a PhD as a doctor. It doesn't imply that you have 45 years of medical school training. It doesn't imply any of that. It just, the intent of this question is to find out, is there anybody here that has some degree of knowledge about medical training that they've learned in the course of a lifetime? And now I wish you would raise your hand so I can ask you a little bit about that. And hopefully I will remember Juror number 14, how are you doing this morning, ma'am?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good, good. Kentucky.
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about your background with respect to medical training, whether it was formal or informal? Just tell me a little bit about yourself in that regard.
Well, when I worked, I explained to you yesterday that when I worked in the psychiatric field, of course, we had medical issues that we dealt with, and I had some training, not only in the psychological area, but in the medical, physical area. And I was primary caretaker for several months for my mother who died of breast cancer, so I was at the hospital like 3 months. My dad died of lung cancer. I helped take care of him. And then I had a sister who died of multiple myeloma, and she, over a course of about 3 years, I was with her almost continuously. So I dealt with the doctors frequently and did a lot of research.
Well, let me ask you this. In the course of your dealings with the doctors, did you, for example, talk with them about ways that you could help when the patient, for example, wasn't at the hospital or the doctor?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you learn a little bit about medication,
Yes.
schedules of medication and things of that nature?
Yes.
Did you learn this during the course of your conversations with doctors while you're trying to help people?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that when you worked, and I think you said you worked in a hospital setting, right? Or
Well, I worked 2 years in outpatient counseling in it's called Mountain Comprehensive Care. It was for psychiatric counseling. And then I was 2 years inpatient psychiatric counseling, and then I went back out and was supervisor over an outpatient partial hospitalization clinic.
did you, from time to time, have requirements attached to your work where you would sit in with doctors and kind of learn about how they would go about treating patients?
Daily.
Okay. In the course of that and those experiences, do you feel that you picked up some information that you would find useful in a case where, as Mr. Pruner alluded to yesterday, there might be some mental health issues that might be presented to you if you're selected to be in this jury? Now, there's 2 concerns I have. One, that you feel like you would be inadequate in your knowledge, or 2, that you might feel like you know more than the people that testify. All right, where do you see yourself in that situation?
Well, I see myself probably on the inadequate side because it's been several years. Medications have changed a lot. At that time, I was very familiar with the psychotropic drugs. I have not kept up with that over the years. So if I were leaning in either direction, it would be toward the inadequate as opposed to overly knowledgeable, to be quite honest.
Well, and for the benefit of all of you, as well as juror number 14, the end destination for all of these types of questions would be related to, do you feel that the information that you have learned up to this point in your life, because you're not going to just wipe it all out and just say, I never learned it. So do you feel that that information puts you in a situation where it would stand in the way of you being fair and impartial in this type of case?
No, I don't
Would you be, in other words, biased for or against any kind of testimony that you might hear related to that type of situation?
No, I don't think so. I know I would not. We'll pass that. I don't think so after yesterday. No, I would not.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that you would share about your kind of knowledge in this arena other than what you've already mentioned for us this morning?
I don't know of anything else.
Okay, all right, thank you. Who else raised their hand on this first row? Anybody? Juror number 27, how are you doing this morning?
All right, how are you?
What about you? Now, you raised your hand, and I did say formal or informal. So what kind of background do you have in terms of maybe medical training, or maybe even how to nurse somebody or how to help somebody? What kind of background do you have in this area?
I have no background in it. It's
Once
informal.
again, we're going to start, we've got the air working this morning. Actually, we can hear it up here a little bit
Okay.
more when he will speak up in a real strong voice that if it helps, again, particularly with that, those to stand up and just speak.
Okay. I was just taught CPR twice. In the 80s and then in 2000, that's it.
Did it change?
Yeah, it did.
All right, good. I was just to make sure. Okay, so you have some CPR background. What about, and maybe yes, maybe no, did you ever have any background in administering medication to anyone?
No.
Do you have any basic understanding of the administration of medication to someone?
No.
Okay, and do you feel that that would deprive you of feeling confident of sitting on the jury because of that? Or can you still listen to testimony that might be presented to you in those areas and weigh it like you would any other kind of evidence?
I would be fair.
Okay. Well, I would presume fairness. What I want to know is make sure you're comfortable if you're selected. And again, I'm talking to you, but for everyone. I said a few minutes ago, not every case is everybody's cup of tea. It really is not. So what I'm trying to get at with all my questions this morning, and I believe, I hope you take this in the right way, is I want to make sure you're comfortable, because if you're not, you're sitting there scared to death you're not going to pick up something, or scared you're not going to understand something, or scared you know too much, or scared you already made up your mind about something. You will not like the experience of being on this jury, and you won't even like yourself at the end of it, because you're going to be then asked to make a very, very important decision about someone or something, and you won't feel that you could do it. And so that's why I'm asking these questions. And I'm not presupposing anything about any of you. I've never met you. So would you still feel comfortable about the possibility of being a juror in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Who else raised their hand when I was asking about whether they had medical training? Juror number 4. Yes, sir. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning.
The only thing I've had is CPR training. Honestly, I'm an electrician. I've had CPR and first aid training.
Okay.
That's basically it.
Okay. No administration of medication or understanding thereof, those kinds of things?
Right, no.
Able to listen, though, and listen to what is given to you in terms of testimony by civilian people, lay people, doctors as well, and just feel comfortable listening and can open your mind about how to weigh the evidence?
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, when it comes to weighing of evidence, the judge is going to go through a complete instruction. Remember I was telling you about the pace of a trial? Well, you'd be amazed, I think, once you get into it, how much has been already determined. There's a very intense intention to not reinvent the wheel every time a trial comes up. And so we have, for years and years and years, dating from our legislature, from our Supreme Court, handed down forever and ever, we have rules that can be followed. And the judge will read you rules related to all of these things. For example, when I say, or Mr. Pruner said to you yesterday, something about weighing of evidence or judging for credibility. Well, the judge will read you instructions about how to do all this if you're on this jury. You don't have to think, oh my God, how do I do this? You know, I've got to think of this all on my own. It's not like that. You will have instructions. I just am curious if you feel comfortable with the possibility of listening to testimony in this area and being able to weigh it once you get the instructions from the judge. And I say your answer is affirmative.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir. Number 10. Juror number 10.
I had the CPR thing as well, but I was vice president of group health benefits where it processed medical claims. I was the therapy committee for the doctor's decision on whether or not it's a cover claim. Most of it was by contract based on different employers.
Now, did you get claims that came to your desk that were related to mental health considerations?
You know, there was a different department altogether, and most of it was a different department, but mostly it was clear cut. You get so many visits.
Oh, I see. So the patient had a requirement to go to a certain number of doctor visits or certain.
And this was determined by the group that we insured, by the employees that we insured. We did not make that determination. They made that determination.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Who else raised their hand? And again, I'm looking for people that had some kind of medical training. Juror number 69. How are you doing this morning, sir?
Good morning, sir.
recurring basis, or would this be a
In the military,
one-time
it was
situation?
in the military, it was a yearly training for us, for the medics, as awareness for suicide prevention, depression, stressed out.
So at least when you were in the military, how long ago did you leave the military? You may have already answered this, I don't remember.
I retired 1st of November last year.
Okay, so relatively recently.
Yes, sir.
And you spent, what, 20-something years in there?
28 years, yes.
28 years, that's what I thought you had said. So during the 28 years you were in the military, on a yearly basis, you had this awareness training that would at least help you in terms of identification of depression or onset of mental illness kind of issues?
Yes,
And how to deal with them? Did you get any training in that session regarding how to deal with those kinds of issues?
It was an awareness of what to look out for, and if somebody comes up to you, for talking or prevention, take them to counselors, help them out, whichever means necessary.
Okay. So I guess in that sense, it was more a surface kind of a situation. You didn't have any depth dealings with patients or anything
Just
of that nature?
surface level awareness.
Okay, all right. Excuse me. Did you have any background, or do you have any background regarding actually trying to assist or help monitor a patient yourself, either whether it be family member or close friend, or?
I have through the Army, yes, sir, because I've worked in TMCs and some hospitals.
Okay, what did that entail?
Just working on the floor, working with orders from the doctors, whatever was necessary.
Did you get, in the course of the work, did you get any kind of feel any kind of understanding or familiarity with medication and how people are medicated and medicines and things of that nature, how they're administered?
Yes, sir.
Having this knowledge that you've accumulated over the course of a lifetime, do you feel that anything that you learned in that process would cause you to feel like you knew more than you should know, or not enough, that would interfere with you being on this jury?
No, sir, it wouldn't interfere.
Are you, from the awareness sessions that you attended yearly, as well as your other work, do you feel that you are more likely to at least acknowledge the presence of mental illness or the onsets of those types of situations, or less? In other words, sometimes people work with something for so long they get they develop some kind of immunity to it. How do you feel about that?
I mean, if it's awareness, I mean, if I see it presented in front of me, yes, I'll know the difference. If that's what is that what you're talking about?
Well, maybe not. And let me rephrase my question so it's better for you to, I think it was a bad question. If you were presented with testimony, perhaps, and yesterday, for example, you heard that there are going to be some doctors that might testify in this case.
Yes, sir.
Well, if the doctors present testimony to you regarding issues related to mental illness, are you able to listen to that and at least
yes, sir.
acknowledge the possibility that it exists?
Through their findings and exists, yes, sir.
Okay. And again, overall big picture question, then you get a chance to weigh the credibility of anybody you listen to, and that goes for everybody. But you wouldn't reject outright the idea of mental illness based on your background, I take it. Okay, and you'd be open-minded about listening to the doctors testify and listening to the circumstances and see what you thought at that point?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Who else raised their hand? Juror number 61. I'm trying to go in some kind of order as we go along here. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good.
Tell me a little bit about your background when it comes to maybe medical training or nursing training, things of that nature. And again, as I said, it doesn't have to be formal. You don't have to go to medical school or anything of that nature. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
In the 1970s, when I was in college, I was married to a medical student, and I helped her a lot with her studies. A lot of memorization involved in medical school. At that time, my interest was in pharmacology, and I intended to go to graduate school for pharmacology. Was accepted, but then decided that I'd had enough college for a while, and never did go to graduate school in that field. Had fairly intensive first aid training a couple times.
Okay. Does your background, even though it was interrupted at some point, your pharmacological interest today, do you feel that you would be able to listen to testimony related to those kinds of issues, and would you feel that you had too much knowledge and you'd be trying to presuppose what a doctor should say or shouldn't say, or would you feel like you didn't complete your education there, so you would feel inadequate in that area? How do you feel about your ability?
Well, through lack of use, I've forgotten a lot of the details of that field. About the only advantage that might give me is a little more familiarity with the terminology and jargon, and I certainly don't feel like I know more than any person who's liable to be called as a professional witness here.
Okay, and do you feel like you're more or less likely, or maybe completely neutral in the situation of whether you would be willing to accept the possibility of mental illness or mental health issues as they're presented to you?
Oh, neutral on that point.
And when you say neutral, what do you mean by that? I hear a lot of people say neutral about something. Does that mean you don't even know if you believe in it, or you believe in it but you're not sure? Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I don't feel like I'm any more or less qualified to judge an issue of mental illness than either of these folks.
Okay, and what about your predisposition to believe in that type of issue?
I'm sorry, restate the question?
What about do you have a predisposition to believe or disbelieve a mental health issue just based on general background and feelings about mental health?
Well, I don't know. Are you asking me, do I believe mental health exists? Yes, there are mental health issues in the world. I believe they influence people's behavior.
Okay, and you're neutral on that. You'd have to wait to hear evidence to support or lack of support of that issue.
Say that again?
You would be waiting to hear evidence regarding support or lack of support for the proposition of mental illness.
Certainly.
Okay. All right. Anyone else raise it? Juror number 59, how are you doing this morning? What is your background related to possible medical training or nursing training?
I'm not sure if this qualifies, but I did work part-time for...
Hold on for just a second. Before somebody notices, can you stand up and speak louder? Don't be bashful. I talk loud all the time. People laugh at me only rarely.
For a short while, I worked part-time as a medical transcriptionist.
What did that imply? What did that entail?
Just listening to doctor's notes and typing it out.
Okay. Did you ever have any dealings with patients? Did you ever have any, in the course of dealing with the doctor's notes and typing them out, did you ever get information that ran across your desk regarding schedules of medication, things of that nature for people that had mental illness?
Yes, in the notes they do write what was prescribed.
Okay. Did you, now in the process of that, when you said you were writing the doctor's notes, were you the person that gives somebody a prescription when they leave the office or something? Was the purpose of the notes, was it a follow-up to a meeting or an appointment?
No, well, this has been long ago. Now a lot of it's done by dictation. But a long time ago it was put on a tape, and then you just listen to the tape and you type whatever they said.
Okay. Okay. Is that the extent of your knowledge and background regarding medical training?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody else raise their hand in that row? Yes, ma'am. Juror number 39, good morning.
Good morning. I've been a phlebotomist for 18 years.
What does a phlebotomist actually do? If you can give me a kind of a generalized idea of it.
We take blood.
Take blood? What do you analyze the blood once you take the samples of it?
No,
You send that to a lab?
We just draw the blood, process it, and it goes out to the lab.
Okay, and I assume that there's some types of regulations and rules regarding the right way and the wrong way to take blood?
Yes.
Who administers those rules? Who basically sends you your instructions on how to do that?
Well, we're certified from the state, and then we have policy and procedure for I work for St. Joseph's Hospital.
Okay. I'm sure that the hospital has its own SOPs also.
Yes.
Okay. How long have you been doing that?
18 years.
18 years? Okay. Have you ever had any direct dealings with patients in terms of the treatment of patients other than the taking of the blood?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Anyone in the next row that would raise their hand? Yes, sir. Number 74. Good morning.
Good morning. In the military advanced life-saving classes every year, and when I was on active duty after 9/11, I was volunteered to be a combat lifesaver, which is, I'm the guy that they see before they see the medic.
Okay.
We had, we were taught how to treat battlefield wounds, stress, heat bombs, things like that.
Were you given any kind of training specifically on how to recognize those kinds of issues as well?
Yes, sir.
And then your training went a little bit further in terms of then how to treat and how to take care of the person that had those.
Yes, sir. We had we carried a medic bag, and we had to be able to hook up IVs and set bones and immobilize and transport and triage and all kinds of stuff like that.
Well, and specifically as it relates to the possibility of mental health issues, which mental health issues would you be able to, at that time anyway, through your classes and training, were you able to identify?
I don't know if it falls under mental health, but, you know, fatigue, stress, that type of stuff. Guys in the field for extended periods of time, it gets on their nerves, wears them down. You have to be able to recognize that, so they don't, you don't let them go too far before, they mess up, hurt themselves, and tear something up.
Was that actually a spoken concern when you received your training, that you have to try to catch those kinds of issues in time before something negative happened?
Yes, sir.
Did you, in the course of your training, learn how to treat people that would have those kinds of issues, or did you send them along to a doctor that would specialize in that area?
We would triage guys. We would see them, try to figure out what was going on, and then send them on for to the medics or to the hospital or the clinic or whatever.
Okay, and so you didn't exactly treat someone on a long-term basis, administer medication or anything like that?
On a personal note, I helped my wife. She had end-of-life care for her mother and grandmother, and I helped her with that. And we had to keep track of their medications and things of that nature. And her grandmother wound up with Alzheimer's, and that was a hard road to go on that.
Was she receiving medication?
Yes, sir.
Did you take part in trying to care for her as well?
Yes, sir.
In the course of the care of the grandmother, did you become aware of schedules of medication and things of that nature?
Yes, sir.
Did you become somewhat familiar with certain types of medication?
Not really, other than, give this pill and this pill, whatever, wasn't really into what they were for.
So you got the assignment and you carried it out?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you feel that your background, your experiences would prepare you well to be seated on a jury such as this? Would you be able to listen to testimony regarding the types of issues that I was asking you if you identified? Listen to testimony about that?
Yes, sir.
Do you feel like your background puts you in a situation where you might think you didn't know enough, or you knew too much, or anything of that nature?
That's what the witness is supposed to do.
So you're ready to listen to them? Okay. One thing I noticed that you did, I guess I should have said this, I sometimes do, sometimes I don't think about it, but you kind of pointed over to juror number 69 and said similar to the kind of training that he had on a yearly basis. I think that's what you meant, right?
Yes, sir. He was an actual medic, and he had, medics have extensive training. We are less well trained than an actual combat, an actual medic. I was a combat lifesaver. He was a combat medic, and it'd be like an intern and a surgeon. I'm the first guy, and he's the hitman.
He's the next guy, huh?
Yes, sir.
Well, what I was getting at, I wasn't. I kind of understood the relationship there, but I was thinking that sometimes I ask jury panels like this: did any of you know each other? Did any of you work? Sometimes we get people that work in the same place. They get people who work for the same companies. Oh yeah, I know you. I saw you last week over there. Again, does anybody in this group know each other from the past before you got here this week? I'm sure that y'all are great personal friends now after sitting together. But in terms of prior knowledge of anybody in here, you guys don't know each other, right? Now you got 69 or 70 good, close personal friends available to you, right? Next time you have a party, you can invite everybody. Do any of you know any of us? I guess I should have asked that too. I don't think I recognize any of you here, but you never know. Okay, all right. You made me think of that when you were starting to refer to number 69 as his experiences. Who in that row also has some background in medical training? Juror number 81, good morning. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Fair to partly cloudy. Better than the weather outside, right?
I know, it's awful. I am not a nurse. I am what they call a unit secretary, which is back in the day before the state of Florida, and I thank you, took away the, where I would have to read the doctor's handwriting and put all their orders in the computer. Now the doctors have to do that. So, but I
They have to read their own handwriting now.
Yeah, so they put their own orders in, you know. I deal with doctors for 12 hours a day on a daily basis. And even though I personally am not a nurse, a lot of times I end up sitting in a patient's room with a patient that is trying to harm themselves. Even though I work on a progressive care unit, we get patients that have Alzheimer's that are trying to get out of bed and they're attached to IVs and all sorts of things going on, and so they don't fall. You know, we try to calm them down. We get a lot of patients who try to harm themselves, a lot of alcoholics going through DTs. And so yeah, I have to sit in that room for 12 hours and watch the patient and make sure that they're calm, and if they start to get a little, you know, antsy, jittery, then I report it to the nurse and they give them medication to try to calm them down. The psychiatrists that come in, usually they'll talk to me and ask me, you know, how's the patient been today, any issues, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you participate in administration of medication to those people?
No, I do not.
Okay, so you basically keep an eye on to make sure they don't do any harm to themselves or other people?
Right.
And then you confer with the doctors to see what the doctor wants to do?
And if I feel that they're starting to get, you know, a little, you know, high strung, you know, a little jittery, then I'll call the nurse and say, hey, can you give them some Ativan or Xanax, whatever's prescribed for them, to try to calm them down. And so a lot of times they're violent, you know.
I was going to ask you, do you have available to you when you're in there with a patient, the history of the patient?
Yes.
So you kind of already know what they were taking or what they should have been taking or could have been taking?
Me personally, I can't speak for any other unit secretary, but I always read the history before I go in the room because I want to know what's ahead of me for 12 hours. So I do read the history and physicals on the patient. And also the nurse will give me a report, and sometimes the psychiatrist will also give me, you know, if it's a new issue.
So it sounds like you have some background in observing people that are suffering a disturbance related to mental illness and perhaps the way they behave and what types of medication they've been taking or should have been taking.
Yes.
Do you feel like any of your background or knowledge would in any way, shape, or form make you feel uncomfortable being on a jury for a case like this, if that kind of testimony is presented to you for your consideration?
No.
Would you feel like you have knowledge that would maybe be more than what the doctors that might testify? Would you feel like you understand them?
I think yes.
In other words, I guess what I'm saying, I'm trying to find a nice way of saying it, but I mean, you're not going to listen to a testimony of a doctor, oh, I would have done this differently.
No, I'm not a doctor.
Well, I know that, but some people, they get used to a pattern of many years of doing something. Maybe they feel like they're capable to do that.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Thank you. Who else raised their hand on that row? Anyone? Good morning, juror number 87. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Well, I have military combat training. I'm a mammography tech. I work in the hospital 5 days a week. And
I remember you had said something about the mammography tech job.
And CPR, first aid.
Do you run across anyone that has any disturbance related to mental illness or mental health issues in your job?
No, sir.
Have you in the past received any kind of training? I know you've been in the military before.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, these other guys that testified, 69 and 74, they talked about having gone through some awareness classes. Did you do those too?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was it similar in nature as
Yes,
what has
sir.
been described already?
Yes.
So you do have some background, at least, in being able to identify the onset of mental illness, the
Yes,
disturbances? Do you feel that that information that you have in some way or another makes you more likely or less likely to accept the possibility of mental illness and conduct that might come from it?
No, sir.
No, you don't. You're not more or less.
Well, no.
Where are we at? We're neutral?
Just a moment, once again, I'm going to be asking the people to stand up back.
Okay.
And also, report, don't talk over each other.
Okay. I do that a lot. I've got to watch that. Okay, so anybody from row 3 on back, do me a favor and stand up. So that way you can, there we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're like juror number 61, neutral, in the sense that you are prepared to listen to testimony. You haven't predetermined that you would believe in mental illness or disbelieve in it.
Yes, sir.
I'm putting words in your mouth. Are they the right words?
They're the right words.
Okay, all right. Do you have any other background that you would share with us regarding this issue?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else in that row that raised their hand? Juror number 111, if you could stand up, please. Good morning, how are you today? I know yesterday you mentioned, I think you told us a little bit about your background with family members, I think, if I remember correctly. Is that what you'd be prepared to tell us about today? You have some background in learning how to help treat somebody or help somebody?
Both. I'm a registered nurse also for 29 years, and my mother also bipolar, committed suicide.
Let me ask you this, with your respect to your mother, did you at any point in time take an active hand in kind of following what she was taking in terms of medication, or
Oh, yes.
did you ever help administer those things to her?
No, she would have to change her medications frequently because it would stop working. She would need to change medications or she wouldn't be compliant. And then
Did you go with her to appointments with doctors?
no, she was Baker acted at one point, and I went to the hospital when and sat with her and stayed with her while she was Baker acted.
So you were pretty much aware of what was going on, but you didn't have an active hand in
I could. I mean,
treatment of it.
regardless of what you tried to do, she was her own person. She was going to do what she was going to do. And then there at the very end, she ended up moving to California with my aunt at the point at which she overdosed.
Let me ask you to switch gears for a second and put on your nurse hat. You've been a nurse for 29 years now. Do you have any kind of specialized training in dealing with mental illness issues?
Other than just CEUs, I would take trying to help in that. I would take some CEUs on depression and things like that. But my specialty is mostly operating room.
You work in an OR setting?
I work in the OR. I did floor nursing for 3 years and then moved into the operating room.
Okay. Do you feel that the background that you have, along with whatever CEUs you've been able to take in, the very personal involvement you have with your mother's situation, do you feel that would somehow or another interfere with you being open-minded about any mental health issues that might come to the course of testimony in this case?
I think I'm very aware of all of it.
Do you feel like you would be able to be a fair and impartial juror, not only to the state of Florida, but also to Schenecker?
I believe, yes.
Okay. Do you have any hesitation about that? Do you have any reservations? Or is there something you're dying to tell me that I haven't been able to figure out a way to ask?
No, I think I'm always very fair. I try to be very fair with everything in my life. I also, when we were dealing with that yesterday, though, I did forget to mention that I do have a father and a stepmother that are retired deputy sheriffs, too.
Okay. Okay. So you have quite a bit of involvement, or not involvement, but you have connections to various aspects of this particular case.
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like anything that you know or anybody that you know would interfere with your ability to be fair and impartial?
No, I feel like I'm a very fair person, but that would be up to you.
Well, let me give you an example. I'll throw some hypothetical example at you. you're a nurse, 29 years, plus you have some background in your mom's situation. Do you feel like that experience would make you more likely to accept as the gospel truth the testimony of a mental health expert if they testify for you, just because of what you know about those kind of doctors?
I wouldn't accept anything as gospel unless I weighed what they said. I mean, even in my settings, I have to observe, listen, weigh out. That would have to be what I listen to.
Okay.
Whatever they say. But
I promised you 2 hypothetical questions. The second one is, you know some police officers, would you be more likely to believe as truth, gospel truth, anything that came out of the mouth of a police officer just because they were police officers, since you know some police officers?
when I was 20 years old, I probably would have. But now, through life experiences, I've learned that the world isn't exactly what, it's not a perfect world. I've had to learn that we have good and bad in every aspect of, good and bad nurses, good and bad doctors, good and bad police officers. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Anyone else raise their hand on that row? Juror number 113, good morning, how are you?
Good morning, I'm fine. How are you?
Pretty good.
I have worked in long-term care facilities as a nursing assistant. Also, most recently, before this job, I was an emergency room technician, and I often had to sit with people who had suicidal, homicidal ideation. I also had to sub as a psych tech on the unit.
When you were at the long-term facility that you mentioned, how many years did you spend there?
About 15.
So you were there a while.
A while, yes.
And was there any particular kind of patient that was mostly present at that facility?
I mainly worked on the Alzheimer's unit.
Okay, all right. So you saw a lot of people with Alzheimer's?
Yes.
Did you sit in on any conferences with doctors about specific patients?
Well, we often had to sit in the care plan sessions.
Did you have a hand in creation of a care plan, or were you there to monitor the creation of the care plan by the doctor?
We were just there mainly observing it, so we had some input as far as, since we were the ones who directly worked with them on the majority of the time. We basically had some input, but it was very minor.
I take it from your explanation of things that your work became more prominent after the creation of the plan. That's when you would deal with the patients?
Yes.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that you were able to administer or at least witness the administration of medication to patients?
Yes.
And the various effects that they might have on the patients?
Yes.
Do you feel like any of your experiences at that facility or any of the other experiences you mentioned to us in the last couple of days would be ones that would cause you to have some bias for or against the possibility of mental illness?
I don't think it would.
And I guess, as always, the end destination is, would you be able to be fair and impartial to both sides in this trial? If testimony was offered regarding an issue, are you able to listen to the testimony and weigh it? And so obviously what I'm getting at here by implication is, you know already that there's going to be some doctors that might very well testify in this case. Are you going to be able to listen to their testimony and then try to weigh what they say? Or are you going to be turned off and say, no way, there's no way that could be, or believe every word they say and say, oh yeah, absolutely, no doubt about it?
Listening. I'm open to listening.
Okay. Anything else you can think of about your background that you would share with us in terms of this approach to it at this moment?
Only that a lot of times in sitting, I would talk to the doctors, talk to the patients, so I kind of know both, or I've had the experience of observing both sides. So.
Okay, so you've actually probably talked to your share of mental health professionals in terms of the doctors?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Juror number 118. How are you doing this morning?
Well, good morning.
rather than repeat the remarks you made yesterday regarding your personal involvement, I just want to ask you in general, did you find yourself as somewhat of a caregiver in any of the situations that you were talking about yesterday?
No, I did not.
Were you aware of caregiving procedures that were being adhered to?
Not very much.
Okay. Would you be, would you think that you were aware of medications and what they were designed to do and the results of them and things of that nature?
Some, yes, limited knowledge.
Limited knowledge. Do you have any background aside from personal involvement with members of family or friends that would have assisted you in that kind of knowledge?
Specifically, no. I do go through annual training and drills for CPR, first aid, and rescue, either through work or my volunteer work, in case there's a chemical, industrial, or electrical accident or drowning. So I go through annual training as a responder.
In the course of your annual training as a responder, are you taught how to recognize mental health issues?
No, sir.
Okay, so that wouldn't be in that area of your background.
It's not correct.
Okay, and I think yesterday you indicated that you could be fair and impartial and you could weigh testimony that was given to you related to mental health issues if you were selected to be on this jury.
Yes.
Has that changed overnight at all? I mean, did you think about anything you said yesterday? Would you change or amend anything you said?
I would not change anything, no.
Okay, thank you, sir. I didn't want to pick on juror number 118. I want to throw this out at all of you. Many of you had a chance to make some comments to somebody, whether it would be to approach the bench and speak directly to Judge Battles, or to speak in response to a question by Mr. Pruner, or now this morning you're having an opportunity to answer some questions with me. I don't know if this would apply to any of you, but did any of you have any second thoughts about things that you previously said during the course of this week, or maybe even things that you may have put down on your information sheet some time ago, I don't know, weeks ago, I don't know how long you'll fill these out, but did anybody have anything that they would change, or something that you thought of that you didn't remember to say the last time you had a chance to say it? Okay, there are some people there, juror number 55, juror number 142, and juror number 176, and juror number 169. And I'm going to ask you to remember that, because I'm going to remember that, and my people over here are going to be writing down those numbers, and later I'm going to ask you what you mean by that, okay? For right now, I want to go on and ask the continuing question of people that have raised their hand regarding other issues, any background having to do with medical training or care. Okay, I need to get those numbers at this last group here. I know that one of them was 142, one of them is 169, one is 137, excuse me, 176. And who's the other person that raised their hand? These are people that changed, that had thought about something different. Yeah, the other one was number 55. I think it was just those four, correct? Okay, hold on to that thought and we'll...
Excuse me, I have some medical training too.
I'll get to you in that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I kind of jumped in the middle of myself over there. It's very ugly when I do that, but anyway. So 4 people, I'm going to remember who you are, and we'll get you to talk about that in a little bit, okay? I'm now back again asking for those people that raised their hand regarding whether they had medical training, and I think we left off with juror 118. Let me talk about to juror 162. Could you please stand up, sir? Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm not sure about medical training, but to the degree that it relates to this case, as an educator, I'm certified to teach students with exceptionalities, be it physical or mental. So I've had training in that. As a principal, I've dealt with a number of students with mental disorders, depression, autism, Asperger's. I did not personally monitor their medication, but I certainly communicated with a parent to make sure that they were consistently and regularly medicated.
Did you, from time to time, have to deal with students that perhaps should have been medicated or taking medication that didn't take them for some reason, or the medication wasn't working? Did you have to deal with the aftermath of that, or did you then turn them in a different direction. I know principals have a pretty busy job on a daily basis. What did you do about that?
Called the parent.
Called the parent?
That was a part of the monitoring with the parent to make sure that they consistently administered it, because I absolutely had to deal with students that did not take their medication.
So you had some firsthand knowledge of seeing the effects of things like that.
Yes.
I knew what I wanted to ask you yesterday. Where were you? Were you a principal here in Hillsborough County?
I was a principal at charter school in Plant City.
Plant City. What's the name of it? Do you remember?
Shiloh.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you this. Do your experiences as a principal or any other experiences you've had in your life related to this issue, do you feel that that would enhance your ability to be fair and impartial in a trial such as this one, or do you think it would somehow detract from it?
I can be impartial. You know, as an administrator, you deal with that a lot too. You have to take, I think too many times we make decisions, bad decisions, based on not having all the information. So it was part of my job to make sure I had all the information before I made it.
And certainly, and this would apply to everyone, but if you're a juror, part of your job is to do what? Acquire all the information, right?
Yes, sir.
That's the idea. That's what we're all here about. And it doesn't come from the attorney's mouths. It comes from the witness stand and the witnesses. So that's again what the end process is leading to. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Who else raised their hand there? I think juror 158. Is that you?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've worked in a hospital setting for about 28 years, starting in the laboratory, clinical side, starting phlebotomy, and then as an assistant, moved over to the anatomical side of the lab, worked as a histology assistant, and then got my training and became a histology technologist.
Did you have specific training in work with mental health patients?
No, sir.
Did you observe any from your post, or you in the areas you worked in?
Sometimes in histology, of course, you're on the, or not in, I'm sorry, doing phlebotomy, you're on the floors, and you have instances where you've got patients that maybe either medications are, wrong, and they're acting out, and that kind of thing, but it's when I can only think of.
Did you ever participate in any conferences with mental health specialists, like doctors of that nature? Okay. Did anything in your experiences, the career that you had for many years, would that, in your mind, do you feel uncomfortable about being on this jury if you were selected to be a juror? Or do you feel like it would put you in good stead to be fair and impartial to both sides?
Be fair and impartial to both sides.
Okay, thank you. Going to continue going down the line. Did anybody else raise their hand in that row? Juror number 142, could you stand up, please? Good morning. How are you today? Good. Tell me a little bit about your background in this area.
Oh, in regards to the medical information, I think I stopped being an adjuster in 2002. It was my previous career. And I was a claims adjuster for about 14 years. And to the last 5 years, I was a bodily injury adjuster. So in regards to that, I had to learn, take classes in interpreting medical records and things like that, but nothing in regards to mental health. It all had to do with automobile accidents. But I felt that you should,
Okay, no, thank you. I appreciate it. Any information is good to know. Thank you.
And also, I was one of the ones that...
I got you. I'm going to come back to you guys before in a second.
Okay.
If I forget, I want you to remind me, but I'm not going to forget. They're going to remind me. Yes, sir. I think you raised your hand as well. How you doing this morning? This is juror 141.
I do neurological research, so we look for compounds that can be administered to Alzheimer's patients and Parkinson's patients. And I research on the metabolic pathways involved. I don't administer medications. There are clinical trials in our building, but for the most part I'm on the molecular side and the discovery side. We work with rats, mice. I give them analgesics and anesthetics before we inject everything else into them. We work with viruses. We work with recombinant proteins. I come from a medical family. My mom is a nurse practitioner. My brother's a doctor. My sister is a physician's assistant. All the cousins are doctors. So.
The rats and the mice, they don't always like you, do they? Are you, as part of your training, do you have knowledge of what the effect of certain chemical compounds when merged with one another is supposed to accomplish? Like, do you know what you're shooting for? And then,
Well, I'm a structural biologist, or I guess a structural biochemist, and so like I used to do like 3D models of chemicals and proteins and how they interact with one another, and look at the pathways and the downstream effects.
and I guess what I'm getting at, I'm trying to find out if you, given your profession, what you do, you're aware of the structure of the chemicals, right? And do you have, is there a correlation between you being aware of the structure of the chemicals and what their intended result should be in a patient?
It's hard, because most of the stuff that we're doing is exploratory, like we're synthesizing new compound groups in them, but I mean, most of the stuff is not well characterized.
So you're kind of on the front edge or the cutting edge of everything. You don't have, you're working with medication before it ever gets to be on the shelves to be purchased.
Yeah, but if a witness is talking about like current drugs, I'm not going to have
Okay. Do you feel like your knowledge would be something that would get in the way of you being able to listen to testimony in this area? Okay. And aside from the relationship with the rats and the mice, you'd be okay as far as being neutral as far as anything presented to you? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Juror number 139. Can you tell me about your background, sir?
Just have regular CPR training yearly, and every other year we have advanced CPR and first aid training in my line of work.
Okay, so the background that you have doesn't include awareness or observation of or identification of mental health issues.
No, sir.
I think you had already answered yesterday that you thought you could be fair and impartial on this type of a subject.
Yes, sir.
In terms of your background, you feel like you can listen to the testimony of doctors as well as civilian witnesses, lay witnesses, and have no problem trying to weigh the testimony?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Juror number 136. How are you this morning?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I worked at Directions for Mental Health for 2 years previously, and then I also have CPR certified as well.
Directions was the name of the place?
Directions for Mental Health.
Directions for Mental Health. Is that a long-term, like a facility of some sort?
It's an outpatient.
Outpatient.
I was an intake counselor, and that's where people would come to get their medication, to see a doctor, to get counseling.
Did you ever participate in or administer medication to anyone?
Never administered, no. Just for them a prescription from the doctor.
Okay.
Or when they would come in, sign them in, find out what they're on. Just basically communication, but as far as administering medication, no.
Did you ever participate in conversations or conferences with the doctors regarding what medication someone should get? So what you saw was the patient and the effects of the patient and how the patient was looking or behaving, and then you told them what prescriptions the doctors were giving prescriptions for that.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything in your background in this area that would deprive you of a chance to be fair and impartial on both sides in this case?
No.
Should you receive testimony from mental health specialists, I take it those are people that you've kind of had dealings with those kind of people in the past? Are there good and bad of those kind of people? Good ones and bad ones?
It's good and bad and everything.
Right. Now, in other words, are you able to weigh the testimony of the mental health professionals just like you might other witnesses?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any kind of predisposition, or in other words, have you already made up your mind that there could be no such thing as a mental health component to a case like this, or that there always will be one? Anything like that? Are you either side of the extreme?
No, I'm neutral. I think that yes, it exists, and I'm definitely willing to hear both sides to know how to determine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the remainder of that row that raised their hand earlier? How about the last row? Anybody that raised their hand? Juror number 172, could you stand up, please? Good morning, sir. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in terms of this issue? And again, you don't have to reiterate matters you've already discussed at the bar, but privately, but did you ever administer medication to someone?
Yes, most of my experience is informal. I basically had to take care of my parents who were both diabetic. Also some hospice care for my late father. So I had to understand the medicines that both of them were taking. I helped administrate medicine to both parents. None of them were related to mental health, at least on their medicine. But I had to understand the medicine, understand how they had to take it, how to measure and give them their doses, since they were to a point where they couldn't always administer it themselves.
So you have some background in administration of medication?
Yes.
Did you ever have any conferences with doctors about patients, the ones you were trying to help?
Well, in the situation of both parents, I did have to have conversations with the doctor, because I basically was the lucid person in the group. I needed to understand what was going on so I could help them. So I would sit in with the doctor and with my parent for their visits to find out what was needed.
Is there anything in your background that would, in your opinion, enhance or detract from your ability to be fair and impartial in this case if you're selected to be a juror?
Negative.
So you feel that you could be able to listen to the testimony of professionals or non-professionals alike and weigh it and make up your mind based just on the evidence?
Correct.
Okay. You're not predetermined, predisposed to knowledge of mental health or lack of knowledge of mental health, anything like that?
I am not. I should also disclose there's an additional component. I do work for a company that handles practice management and electronic medical records for doctors' offices as well. So I do communicate with doctors' offices on a daily basis, and sometimes I have to look at patient claims and what's inserted into the medical record. So I also have to look at that and get some information to help them figure out what they've done wrong.
Do the patients or the doctors?
For the billing department at the doctor's office mostly. Sometimes I do directly speak with the doctor when they're having trouble with a claim and try to find out why a claim is not going across or why it's being rejected. So I can help them understand what they are doing. So I've had to pick up a lot of this information on the fly, so to speak.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that raised their hand? Juror number 174, could you please stand up? Good morning.
For a year, I worked at a long-term care facility and inpatient Alzheimer's dementia unit with adults who took care of administered medications. For 8 years, I've been a registered nurse. My specialty is pediatrics. I'm a certified pediatric nurse.
A little louder for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am a certified pediatric nurse. I also have experience in continuing education, staff development. I've been a nursing administrator, and I also teach.
What do you teach, sir?
Teach pediatrics.
So your area of specialty, that pretty much focuses your entire professional life at this point, pediatrics.
True, as well as school, nursing school administration.
Okay. Now, the time that you spent in the facility, you said you spent a year, was that an internship of some sort?
No, I was paid as a tech.
As
So
a
I
tech?
took care of
Okay,
the
that was the
basic
Alzheimer's
needs.
facility?
Yes.
Okay, did you have any chance to observe schedules of medication for those patients that were at that facility?
Yes.
Did you participate in conferences with the doctors that ordered those prescriptions for them?
Not at that facility. I would talk to the nurse who managed the unit, and she would be the one. But if there was anything in the change in the behavior, I would tell the nurse at that time. That would be inpatient care time.
I got you. So from time to time, you would observe changes in behavior, and then you report that, bring it up the chain to see if there would be any kind of adjustments made?
Yes.
And what was the idea there, make an adjustment in medication? Try to deal with whatever observations you made?
Correct.
Okay. Do you feel like your background prepares you well to perhaps be seated as a juror in this case, or is it something you feel uncomfortable with based on your background?
No, I would be comfortable.
Okay, do you think you could be fair and impartial on both sides in this case?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that raised their hand on this issue? Stand up, please. This is juror number 176. How are you doing this morning?
I'm fine.
Yesterday in my bio, I mentioned that I'm legal guardian for the last 20 years for a young woman with a disability. And her disability is a cognitive one. She has an IQ of 50, so I didn't even think about the mental health issue, but she's also on medication for depression and anxiety. And so I sit in on her psychiatrist appointments every 3 months.
So you're the caretaker for this young lady?
I'm her legal guardian.
A legal guardian, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
and so you take her...
She lives on her own.
Okay, you're a legal guardian. Do you take her to her appointments?
She takes the bus. I meet her there. I've never missed an appointment until this last Wednesday when I was here.
Okay. So you are you allowed to sit in on the meetings with the doctor?
The psychiatrist asks me to sit in because she has an IQ of 50,
Right.
and she has a hard time articulating.
Okay. So you sit in on those, so you have some kind of a bird's eye view, so to speak, of the conversation between the mental health professional and your legal ward. Okay. Have you ever administered medication to her?
She takes her own medication.
Okay. Do you have some understanding? Do you feel like from the conferences you've attended and whatever other information you have, do you feel like you have an understanding of the medication that she's taking?
I understand why she's taking it, and they're being adjusted at times. She has hormonal changes and growth changes and weight changes, and they have to change her medication. Sometimes they're not really effective, so there are changes that are made.
I see. So
but I don't
kind of go ahead.
I don't understand. I mean, I wouldn't be able to come up with an alternate. All I'm there is to let him know that there's been a change, like she's doing this sort of thing.
Okay. So you're in a position where you are aware of the need for changes in medication. You aren't the one that would actually make those changes, but you kind of understand when they're needed, and then you make sure the doctor understands.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those 4 people that raised their hand about things that they may have rethought since yesterday. Juror number 55, could you stand up, please, sir?
And Coach, please.
Sure. Judge, is that okay with you? Juror 142, I think you're one of the ones that raised your hand.
Because the other jury mentioned it, I also have a relative who's a police officer. It's my cousin's daughter's husband is a police officer, so I didn't know if you should know that.
Well, like I said, any information is okay for me to know. That's fine. I guess I would ask you the same question I would ask anyone. If I asked this as an entire jury panel, do you all know police officers, and however many would raise their hand and say, yeah, I do, they're friends of mine, or whatever, I would just say, given the fact that you have a relationship with a police officer as a friend or somebody that you know or admire and respect or whatever, or hate or detest or whatever the relationship might be, are you able to put that aside and consider the testimony of whatever police officers happen to come to this courtroom? And Mr. Pruner read to you a list of the ones that would come here. I take it that person that you know is not on that list.
Exactly, but because it's...
Right. No, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. And so I guess the question would be to you and to anyone else that's in the situation, would you tend to have a belief that anything a police officer says is going to be absolutely 100% accurate and truthful just because they're a police officer based on the fact that you know and respect and like another police officer?
My question would be absolutely no.
Okay, but that's what I would ask anyone that's in that situation. I appreciate the information. Juror number 169, I believe you raised your hand also, that you had some thoughts about something you had said earlier.
Yes, yes.
Judge, is it okay if 169 approaches? In the last day or two?
Something I said, but now I've said it. Yesterday, the other gentleman had asked if ourselves personally or anyone we were close to had a mental health issue. And as I explained with the woman that I'm the guardian of, I didn't think of her as being mentally ill, but she does take medications for mental illness. And I think of her more as being the cognitive disability. That is her primary disability.
Right, I think yesterday you phrased it that you only made reference to the cognitive disability. Today,
that was in my bio. I didn't respond when you asked the other question.
Okay, today you made the addition.
Well, I realized that she also has a mental illness. I already always knew it, but I don't think of it in that sense.
All right, thank you very much, ma'am.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm aware of the time. We're going to give you about a 20-minute comfort break. As I send you out, I'm going to remind you, stay in the lobby so we can be lined up ready to come back in. Stay on schedule while you're out there, and I'll remind you, of course, of those important instructions, not to discuss this case or what we're doing in this case, that is, questions, the entry of the process itself, not to discuss that among yourselves, not to discuss it with anyone else, not to allow anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. Of course, not speak at all with attorneys, any witnesses, defending about any subject, not to read or listen to any reports, application of any source, not to do any sort of research, gather information, or communicate about the case or the people or places involved or your jury service with anyone, including friends and family members, through any source, including all those electronic devices. We'll send you out for a break. All rise.
Thank you.